What if there was like a hidden map? A way to really understand things, not just the world, but your own deepest self. It's an ancient idea explored deeply by Imam Abdullah bin Abi Bakr al-Idaris in Al-Kibrit al-Lamar.
The Red Sulfur and the Greatest Elixir, a profound work.
Yes, and Habib Omar bin Hafid touched on it recently too. So our mission here is to explore these 5 garments, these stages really, moving from the outside in.
And what's so interesting, I think, is how this isn't just some old religious text. It's actually a pathway for anyone seeking deeper connection, purpose, that kind of thing, self-awareness. It shows that real piety, it's not just doing things outwardly. It's a journey, like you said, layers deep into the heart, the soul.
So it goes beyond just the actions we see.
Precisely. Which brings up a key question for us, right? How do we move past just, the external motions to actually cultivate a piety that genuinely changes us inside?
Okay, so these garments, where do we start? The sources say it begins with, well, us, our physical selves. This first garment, it's about adorning our limbs, eyes, ears, tongue, the 7 main ones.
Right.
By following commands, avoiding what's forbidden. Seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it?
On the surface, yes. But the real insight here, connecting it to the bigger picture, is about the intention. The piety in the heart behind those actions. That's what truly reaches the divine, you see, not just the form.
Okay, so it's not just not looking at bad things, for example.
Exactly. Take the eye. The pious eye, yes, it avoids looking with contempt or getting too caught up in worldly stuff. But more than that, it actively looks at creation to reflect. It seeks God's signs. The source mentions that verse about the camels.
Do they not look at the camels, how they are created?
That's the one, seeing the divine design. And it also means yearning to see the faces of the righteous, the prophets. There's immense spiritual benefit in that kind of sight.
So it's transforming how we use our senses. What about, say, the ears or the tongue?
Same principle. The pious ear, it avoids the forbidden, harmful music, gossip, just idle talk. But it also finds delight in listening to the Quran, to stories of the prophets, the upright. There's that amazing example of Mary hearing angels speak to her, because her ear was adorned with this piety.
Wow. And
Imam Jafar al-Sadiq repeating a verse until he heard it directly, from the source. He shows this almost miraculous hearing as possible.
Incredible. And the tongue?
Avoids lies, backbiting, cursing, vulgarity. Pretty standard, maybe.
Yeah.
But positively, it speaks of God, remembers the prophets, praises the righteous. It said a believer doesn't lie. Lying is seen as a mark of unbelief, actually.
So this first garment is really the foundation, getting our actions aligned.
Absolutely. And it's crucial, the sources stress this, that this garment, like all of them, is seen as a gift. Ramaniyat Muhammadiyah.
A divine grace.
A grace from God, given through the Prophet Muhammad's spiritual path. Even Abu Bakr, his closest companion, is mentioned as embodying this, giving everything wealth, life for God.
That really grounds the outer actions. But okay, moving inward. Past the limbs. The heart. How do you, clothe the heart? That sounds much less tangible. What does that look like?
It's a great question, because this is where the real inner work starts. The second garment is about adorning the heart with maqamat, spiritual stations, internal states.
Okay.
These define our relationship with the divine. The sources list quite a few, 10 key ones.
Like what?
Well, there's repentance, tawbah, sincerely turning from sin, really regretting it, piety or wariness, whereas avoiding doubtful things, seeking what's clearly pure.
Makes sense.
Asceticism, detachment from worldly things that don't bring you closer to God. Patience, sabr. And this isn't just putting up with stuff. It's steadfastness in obedience against disobedience, and yes, facing adversity.
Right, it's active.
Very active. Then there's neediness or poverty. This one's fascinating.
Poverty, you mean like financially?
Not just financially, no. It's a deep, deep awareness that you depend utterly on God for every breath, every cell, every single moment.
Wow.
Realizing that absolute neediness, it removes pride. It actually brings you closer. Remember, prostrate and draw near.
Okay. I see the connection.
Then gratitude, shukr, seeing God as the source of everything good. Fear, cough, but more like awe, reverence for God's majesty.
Not just being scared.
No, it's deeper. And balanced by hope, Raja. Trusting in God's immense generosity, his mercy. The source actually says hope leads to wusul.
Union
with God, yes. Then reliance, tawakkul, complete trust. And finally, contentment, rida. Being satisfied with God as Lord, with his decree, his way.
That's a lot of stations. Each one sounds like it truly reshapes you from the inside.
Exactly. They're not just ideas you think about. They become living states.
So we've gone from limbs to heart. Now, you mentioned going even deeper, to the soul.
Yes, the Ru, described as the inner essence of the heart. The third garment clothes this soul. And here the states become even more profound. Presence, closeness, intoxication, arrival, annihilation, permanence.
Okay, these sound intense. Intoxication, what does that mean in this context? It doesn't sound literal.
Definitely not literal, no. Sukar here means being completely absorbed in God's presence. Utterly. So much so that you become, well, almost oblivious to everything else.
Oblivious. How?
It could be from overwhelming joy or maybe overwhelming awe. Think about how intense pain can sometimes make you unaware of your surroundings. It's analogous.
Yep.
Imam Abu Bakr al-Idaris wrote a poem about it. I was intoxicated by him, found intimacy. I was annihilated from my physical self and senses. It's about that total absorption.
Annihilated. You mentioned that too, along with permanence. That sounds like a contradiction almost. Annihilation and then permanence, how does that work?
It does sound paradoxical, right? But it's a sequence. Annihilation, Fana, is about the ego dissolving, blameworthy traits falling away. Your awareness of anything besides God diminishes.
So you kind of disappear.
In a sense, your lower self does. But it's not the final step. Permanence, Baha, is the return.
The return.
You return to interact with the world, with people, but differently.
Yeah.
You're transformed. You're no longer veiled by creation from the Creator. Your connection to people is now purely for God's sake, to guide them, to benefit them. You act from a place of divine connection.
Ah, I see. It's a transformation, not an erasure.
Precisely. There's a lovely story about Umar ibn Abd Aziz. As a young man, he wanted the finest clothes, soft as silk. But later, as caliph, when he, tasted these higher realities, he wore rough wool and apparently wished for even coarser stuff.
Why?
Because his soul's desire had shifted. It had tasted something beyond worldly comfort and yearned for that deeper reality. It shows how these garments elevate your very being.
Okay, we're really getting into the deep inner realms now. Soul, and then the secret. Sir, that's the fourth garment, the place of witnessing the divine. What does it mean to adorn that?
Yeah, the Sir, the innermost secret. Adorning this is about realizing, truly witnessing God's absolute oneness, Tawhid. Not just intellectually knowing God is one, but experiencing it. His oneness in his essence, his attributes, his actions.
So everything comes back to him.
Everything. Understanding that nothing exists or acts independently. It's all within his grasp. All from him, all returns to him. The poet Labid said, everything apart from God is vanity. It's that profound sense of God's sole absolute reality. This stage is for those who truly witness.
Witnessing. Okay. And that leads us to the final stage, the fifth garment. The grand garment. Kal al-Tafrid, the garment of singularity. This sounds like the absolute peak. What happens here?
It is the pinnacle. Its final garment, it said, is truly known only by God. He bestows it on very few exceptional individuals.
The unique ones.
Yes, among the closest to him. It's described as being studded with pearls and jewels, metaphors for divine knowledge, insights, secrets.
And what's the core of it?
The most significant aspect is the secret of vice-creationcy, Sir al-Khalifa.
Like Adam.
Exactly like Adam's role. Remember, Adam was taught the names, all the names. He became a mirror reflecting God's attributes, the beautiful, the majestic. That's the essence of true vice-regeneracy, being a clear, polished mirror for the divine in the world.
And this path, these garments, it's still accessible.
That's what the source emphasizes, yes. This pathway has been preserved since the Prophet Muhammad's time. In every era, there have been people who attained all 5 garments. It's an enduring legacy.
It sounds incredibly profound, but also very challenging. Who actually reaches these levels? Who wears these garments?
Well, the source gives a kind of hierarchy, showing how spiritual attainment deepens. It's quite insightful. First, you have the people of faith, al-Iman. They are considered the elite of humanity simply by having faith. Through that, they gain salvation.
Okay, the foundation.
Then, among the faithful, you have the scholars, al-Ulama. They gain higher ranks, degrees in paradise. But interestingly, the source notes that not all scholars are necessarily knowers of God.
So knowledge isn't the whole story.
Not the whole spiritual story, no. Which leads to the next level. The Gnostics, the knowers of God, al-Arifun. These are the elite among the scholars. Their spiritual depth is different. A single prostration from one of them is said to be better than, 100,000 from a scholar who isn't a Gnostic.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It points to the quality of presence and connection. They attain true closeness to God.
And is there a level beyond the Gnostics?
Yes, the very peak. The truly exceptional elite among them are the wise, al-wasa miluno ala rida. These are the ones who possess that fifth garment, the divine garment of singularity we just talked about.
The vice-migrants.
Essentially, yes. They have this special understanding of God's signs. They're even granted the ability to intercede for others. There's that powerful story of Uwais al-Qarani, unknown on earth, basically, but famous in the heavens.
Right. The prophet told Umar and Ali to seek him out.
Yes. Seek him out and ask for his prayers. And it said he'll intercede for vast numbers of people on the day of judgment. Their intellect, it's described as being connected to the first intellect God created. Profound wisdom.
Okay, that hierarchy makes sense. Now, we hear the term Sufi used a lot in these contexts. How does it fit with these garments? What does Sufi really mean here? Because there are definitely stereotypes out there.
That's a really important question because, yes, misconceptions abound. The source is quite clear. A true Sufi isn't defined by, wearing a certain robe or specific practices like whirling or clapping.
Things people often associate with the term.
Exactly. The definition given is the scholar of God, alim billah, someone who truly knows God.
So what does that look like in practice?
It means someone who first puts things in their proper place. They understand the divine order. They manage their time, their spiritual states, guided by divine knowledge. They give creation its due, but God his ultimate due.
So no acting for show.
Never. No seeking validation from people. They also know what to conceal and what to reveal. They act with incredible discernment, with wisdom. And crucially, they embody the Sharia, the law, the tariqah, the path, and the haqiqat, the reality. It's all integrated.
Law, path, reality, integrated. That's a much deeper definition than the stereotypes.
Much deeper. It speaks to a profound, balanced wisdom.
And within that definition, are there different sort of styles, different ways these scholars of God might live outwardly?
Yes, the sources mention two interesting types, showing different approaches to outward conduct while maintaining that inner depth. First, the Malamatiyya. These are people who are deeply pious internally, but they actively hide it.
Hide it? Why?
To protect their sincerity. They might deliberately appear very ordinary, even engage in mundane things just to avoid any attention or praise that could corrupt their intention. They focus on hidden worship.
Interesting. Keeping it purely between them and God.
Exactly. Then there are the Qalandariya. They're also sincere, deeply connected. But unlike the Malamatiyya, they're totally unconcerned with appearances or social norms.
How so?
They don't adopt a specific look or stick to one place. They follow where their heart finds presence with God. Could be a market, a mountain, a mosque. Their focus is entirely inward, on the heart's purity.
So they might seem unconventional.
They might, but the key clarification for both types, Malamatiyya and Qalandariya, is that if they are authentic, their path is still firmly rooted in sincerity and the Sharia, the divine law. It's not an excuse for laxity or wordness for its own sake. It's just a different way of navigating the world while maintaining that deep inner connection.
Wow. Okay. What an incredible journey we've taken. From just how our eyes see all the way to the deepest secrets of the soul. This deep dive into the 5 garments of piety, it really does feel like a map for inner transformation. We've seen how outer actions, the heart's inner states, the soul's experiences, and that ultimate realization of oneness, it all fits together, this path towards vice-carency.
Absolutely. And stepping back, what this whole framework really shows us, I think, is that spiritual growth isn't piecemeal.
Yeah.
It's not just doing isolated good deeds. It's about this progressive layering of our entire being, recognizing these hidden depths we all have, and consciously trying to align every single aspect of ourselves with the divine. Which maybe leaves a question for you listening to reflect on. In what ways, maybe small ways, could you start to consciously clothe yourself with even that very first garment? Being more mindful of, say, what your eyes rest on or what your ears take in or what your tongue speaks. And just notice how might that subtle, intentional shift begin to open doors to maybe a deeper understanding or richer connection in your own life, something to ponder.
Thank you for watching. Explore our bookstore on Amazon.